The rain had been falling for hours, a low, relentless drum against the tall windows of the old Victorian house we rented on the edge of campus. It was the first week of November, the kind of cold, wet night that made the whole world feel smaller. Like the house was the only real place left. I came in late, almost midnight after a 12-hour lab shift. My hair was plastered to my forehead, my scrubs damp at the cuffs. The front hallway smelled like wet wool, coffee, and the faint cedar and citrus scent that always clung to Elias. We'd been roommates for 7 months. Ever since the housing office threw us together in this creaky 3-bedroom, with its warped floors and radiators that hissed like cats, Elias was the quiet one. Third-year med student, always in hoodies 2 sizes too big, earbuds in, studying at the kitchen table until 3 in the morning. We got along fine, polite nods, shared groceries, the occasional, "You want the last dumpling?" He never brought anyone home, never talked about dating. I figured he was just focused. I kicked off my shoes, hung my jacket on the banister, and padded toward the stairs. That's when I heard it. A soft, uneven hitch of breath from the living room. The lamp by the couch was on, its bulb weak and amber, throwing long shadows across the bookshelves. I stopped in the doorway. Elias was on the couch, curled on his side, facing away from me. One arm tucked under his head, the other hidden beneath the old gray blanket we fought over in winter. His shoulders were tense, rising and falling too fast. The blanket shifted in small, deliberate movements. The sound he made next, low, stifled, almost pained, went straight through me. I should have backed out. I knew that even as my feet refused to move. Instead, I whispered, "Elias." Everything stopped. The blanket froze. His whole body went rigid. I heard the sharp intake of breath. Then the frantic rustle as he sat up, yanking the blanket to his waist. His face was flushed dark, eyes wide and glassy with shock. Hair stuck to his damp forehead. He stared at me like I'd caught him committing a crime. "Shit, Leo," I thought. His voice cracked. "I thought you were on nights all week." "I swapped with Priya," I said stupidly, because what else was there to say? He wouldn't look at me. His hands gripped the edge of the blanket so hard his knuckles went white. "Just forget you saw anything, please." Didn't move. The rain kept hammering the windows. My pulse was loud in my ears. I'm not judging you," I managed. My throat felt raw. "I swear." He laughed once, a brittle sound. "Right, I mean it." I took one step into the room, then another. "You don't have to hide. Not from me." His eyes flicked up, wary. "You don't know what you're saying? Maybe not." I sat on the coffee table in front of him, close enough to see the tremor in his lower lip. "But I know what it's like to think you have to do everything alone." Silence stretched between us, thick and humming. He swallowed hard. I don't usually let anyone." He stopped, jaw clenching. "I know," I said softly. Another long beat. Then, so quietly, I almost missed it. "I can't finish." "Not now." "Not after," he gestured vaguely, mortified. The words hung in the air like smoke. I don't know what made me say it. Maybe the rain. Maybe the way his shoulders curled inward, like he was trying to make himself smaller. Maybe the fact that I'd spent months watching him study alone. Eat alone, smile politely but never fully. "You don't have to stop," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Or you could let me stay." "If you wanted." His head snapped up. "What?" "I'm not asking for anything you don't want to give," I said quickly. "But you don't have to be alone right now. Not if it's harder that way." He stared at me for what felt like years. I watched the war play out across his face. Fear, shame, longing, disbelief. Finally, he let out a shaky breath and gave the tiniest nod. I moved slowly like he was something wild that might bolt and sat on the edge of the couch beside him. Not touching. Just there. The blanket was still bunched in his lap. His chest rose and fell too fast. Minutes passed. The rain eased into a softer rhythm. Eventually his hand crept out from under the blanket, hesitant, and rested on the cushion between us. I covered it with mine. His fingers were cold. He turned his palm up and let me thread our fingers together. Another minute. Then he leaned just slightly until his temple brushed my shoulder. "Is this okay?" He whispered, "More than I said." His breath trembled against my neck. Slowly, carefully, he guided my free hand beneath the blanket. The heat of him hit me first, then the slickness, the way he was still half hard and aching. I curled my fingers around him gently. He made a broken sound and hit his face against my collarbone. I took my time. Slow strokes at first, learning the weight of him, the way his hips jerked when I swept my thumb just right. He clung to my shoulder, breath hitching against my skin. Every small noise he let out felt like a gift he'd never given anyone before. When he came, it was quiet, just a shuddering exhale, and my name barely audible like a prayer. His whole body went lax against me. I held him through the aftershocks, pressing my lips to his temple, tasting salt and rain. After a while, he pulled back just far enough to look at me. His eyes were wet, but there was something lighter in them now. Less fear. "Thank you," he said, rough. I brushed his hair back from his forehead. "Anytime you don't want to be alone?" "You're not," he nodded, small and wondering, then tucked himself against my side again. We stayed like that until the lamp flickered and the rain finally stopped. Two silhouettes on an old couch in a quiet house. Learning a new kind of closeness neither of us had planned for. Outside, the clouds broke. A thin blade of moonlight slipped through the curtains and fell across us like a promise. "Here's a new version of the story you wrote. Same slow, tender tension, same rain-soaked intimacy, same aching care, but with different characters, a slightly different setting, and a new rhythm. I kept the heart of what you loved and let it breathe in its own way." The apartment smelled like old books and the jasmine candle Elias always forgot to blow out. We'd been living together 8 months when the storm rolled in, the kind that knocks the power out and makes the city feel suddenly small. I was on the couch sketching in the half-dark when I heard him, a low, choked sound from the hallway, like someone trying not to cry too loudly. Elias stood in the doorway of his room, arms wrapped around himself, shoulders shaking. Moonlight from the window cut across his face. He looked younger than 23, looked breakable. I set my pencil down. "Hey," I said, soft as I could. "You okay?" He shook his head, just once. Rain hammered the fire escape. I crossed the room slowly, the way you approach a deer that might bolt. When I was close enough, I asked, "Can I sit with you?" He nodded, barely. I sat on the floor beside his bed, back against the frame, leaving space. For a long time, we just listened to the storm. Then he slid down beside me, knees drawn up, forehead against them. His voice came out muffled. "I don't know how to be this," he said. I didn't ask what this was. I knew. Elias had grown up in a house where love was conditional and silence was safety. He'd never said the word gay out loud, not once, not even to me. And I'd never pushed. I reached out, slow, and rested my hand on his wrist. "You don't have to know tonight." He turned his head just enough to look at me. His eyes were red, wet. "Is this okay?" He whispered. My heart cracked open. "It's more than okay." He let out a breath that sounded like surrender. I shifted closer, careful, until our shoulders touched. Then his head dropped against mine. We stayed like that until the rain eased and the candle in the living room finally guttered out. I'm Julian, by the way. I talk too much, paint on every surface that will hold still, and leave half-finished mugs of tea everywhere. Elias is quiet, meticulous. The kind of person who lines his books up by color and remembers how you take your coffee 3 months after you mention it once. We balanced. We were friends. Movie marathons, late-night ramen, arguing over whose turn it was to take the trash out. Normal. But after that night, normal tilted, mornings became careful dances. I'd be at the stove flipping pancakes and feel his gaze on my back. When I turned, he'd look away fast, cheeks pink. Once, reaching for the same orange in the fruit bowl, our fingers brushed. Neither of us moved for a second too long. He started lingering in doorways. I started noticing the way his hair curled when it got humid, the way he bit his lip when he was thinking hard. We didn't talk about it. We just orbited. One Thursday, the power went out again. Elias lit every candle we owned. The living room glowed gold. We ended up on the couch under the big knit blanket his grandmother sent last Christmas. Some old movie flickered on the laptop balanced on the coffee table. But we weren't watching. Halfway through, I felt his hand creep across the cushion until his pinky brushed mine. I turned my hand over, palm up, an invitation. He stared at it like it might disappear, then threaded our fingers together. His were cold. Mine weren't. The movie ended. Credits rolled. Neither of us moved. "Jules," he said, so quiet I almost missed it over the rain. "Yeah, I think." He swallowed. "I think I've wanted to hold your hand for months." My chest felt too full. "I've wanted you to." He looked at me then. Really looked, eyes wide and terrified and hopeful all at once. I leaned in, slow enough that he could pull away. He didn't. Our foreheads touched. His breath trembled against my lips. "We don't have to do anything," I whispered. "We can just stay here." He nodded against me. "So we did? Hours, maybe?" The candles burned lower. Outside, the storm softened into something gentler. Later, when he finally spoke again, his voice was raw. "I'm scared, I know. I don't want to mess us up." "You won't," I said, and hoped it was true. We didn't kiss that night. It felt too big, like if we crossed that line too fast, the whole fragile thing might shatter. Instead, we fell asleep on the couch. Tangled under the blanket, my arm across his chest, his heart beat steady under my palm. The next weeks were autumn, turning sharp, orange leaves stuck to the windows. Wind rattling the panes, the radiator clanking like it was annoyed to be awake. Inside, everything felt suspended. I left small things for him. A doodle of two silhouettes sharing an umbrella slipped under his door. A playlist named Simply Rain left open on the shared Spotify. A mug of chamomile on his desk. When I heard him pacing at 2 a.m., he left things too. My favorite sweater folded neatly on my chair when I came home shivering. The jasmine candle relit without my asking. Once, a sticky note on the bathroom mirror, "You left your sketchbook open again." Page 47 made me smile. We still hadn't kissed. Some nights he'd sit on the fire escape smoking cloves he didn't even like, just to have something to do with his hands. I'd watch from the kitchen and want to pull him inside, warm him up, tell him he never had to perform calmness for me. But I waited one evening in late October. I came home to find him at the table surrounded by shredded erasers and crumpled paper. His shoulders were tight. "Bad day?" I asked, dropping my bag. He didn't look up. "I told my mom I wasn't coming home for Thanksgiving." I waited. She asked why. I said I was staying with a friend. She kept pushing. "Who's the friend? Is it a girl? Why don't you bring her home?" His laugh was brittle. I hung up. I crossed the room, pulled out the chair beside him. "I'm sorry." He rubbed his eyes hard. "I'm tired of lying." "You don't have to lie here," I said. He looked at me then, something fierce flickering behind the fear. "Then what am I supposed to do, Julian?" "Just say it." "Out loud?" "Only if you want to." He stared at the table like it held answers. Then, quietly, "I like you. More than friends are supposed to, and it's terrifying." The air left my lungs. "Elias, I know we're roommates. I know it could be a disaster. I know I'm a mess about this. But his voice cracked. "I want to be brave enough to try." I reached for his hand. This time, he let me take it without hesitation. "You're already brave," I said. "Braver than you think," he laughed, wet and shaky. "You're biased. Maybe, but I'm also right." That night, the rain came back harder than ever. Thunder rolled like it wanted in. We ended up on my bed because his room was cold, sharing the big duvet, candles flickering on the dresser. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. I lay on my side, watching him. "Jules," he said after a long time. Will you kiss me?" My heart stopped, then started again twice as fast. I shifted closer until our noses brushed. "Only if you're sure," he answered by closing the distance. It was soft, careful, a question and an answer all at once. When we pulled apart, his eyes were shining. "Okay?" I whispered. He nodded, smiling for real this time. More than we kissed again, slower, learning. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside it was warm, quiet, safe. When we finally fell asleep, his head was on my chest, my fingers in his hair. And for the first time in months, neither of us was afraid of what came next. The rain kept falling. We let it. Once upon a time, in a bustling college town nestled between rolling hills and foggy mornings, there lived a young man named Alex. He was a third-year architecture student, always sketching blueprints in his notebook. Dreaming of buildings that could touch the sky, Alex shared a cozy, slightly run-down apartment with his roommate Liam, whom he had met during freshman orientation. Liam was studying literature, with a penchant for quoting poetry at odd hours and a quiet intensity that drew people in like moths to a flame. But beneath Liam's calm exterior lay a fortress of walls, built brick by brick from years of subtle hurts and hidden fears. It all started innocently enough. Alex had always noticed Liam's kindness, the way he'd leave extra coffee brewing in the mornings or pick up Alex's favorite snacks from the corner store without being asked. But one rainy afternoon, Alex misread that kindness as something deeper. He thought Liam needed space to process his feelings, to let the budding connection between them simmer. That evening, determined to bridge the gap, Alex decided to cook dinner. The kitchen filled with the savory aroma of roasted vegetables, sizzling chicken, and fresh herbs. He set the table for two, complete with candles flickering softly against the dim light. "Liam," Alex called up the stairs, his voice echoing through the narrow hallway. "Dinner's ready." Liam descended slowly, his face a mask of unreadable emotions, eyes, shadowed lips pressed into a thin line. He approached the table but halted midway, his gaze locking onto Alex's. "Alex," he said, his voice steady but laced with tension, "we need to talk." Alex's heart plummeted like a stone into a well. He nodded, forcing a casual tone. "Okay? What's on your mind?" Liam swallowed hard, his hands fidgeting at his sides. "I like you a lot. I really do." He paused, staring at the worn wooden floor as if it held the answers he sought. "But I'm not sure if I'm ready for ... everything. I'm scared that if I let you in completely, I'll shatter, or worse, I'll end up hurting you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Alex felt a pang in his chest but met Liam's eyes with honesty. "I'm scared too," he admitted softly, "but I want to try as long as it's at your pace. Whatever you're comfortable with." He reached out tentatively, his fingers brushing Liam's arm in a gesture of reassurance. "I care about you deeply. If you need time, that's okay." Liam's eyes glistened with unshed tears, a vulnerability cracking through his usual composure. "I've messed up before," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've never done this, never with someone I actually care about. It's easier to pretend the feelings aren't there, to keep everything surface level." He let out a brittle laugh, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Fear of intimacy, ... It's a powerful thing. It builds these walls we hide behind." Liam had constructed those walls around his heart long ago, brick by painstaking brick. Vulnerability felt like a battlefield, fraught with danger. He'd been wounded in quiet ways. A high school friend's rejection after he confided his sexuality. An uncle's offhand remarks laced with ignorance, masquerading as humor. Those scars lingered, even when Liam convinced himself they'd faded. He carried them into every interaction, a silent armor that kept the world at arm's length. Alex listened intently, trying to understand the depth of Liam's pain. He leaned against the kitchen counter, the uneaten dinner growing cold between them. "What does everything mean to you?" Alex asked gently, his voice a soothing anchor in the storm. Liam hesitated, then spoke slowly, as if each word was a revelation. "Letting someone see me really see me. My flaws, my skin, my desires, without shame or hiding. Letting someone touch me, know me, love me without me trying to control it all or box it up." His voice cracked slightly, revealing the raw edges of his fear. Alex's heart swelled with empathy and longing. He wanted that too to be the one who helped dismantle those walls, to hold Liam through the uncertainty. "I want that for us," Alex said, his words earnest. "I want to be the one you trust with that." In the days that followed, their relationship drifted like a boat on choppy waters, moments of closeness interspersed with stretches of distance. Alex gave Liam space when he sensed the need, resisting the urge to push. Some evenings, Liam would retreat to the living room, hunched over his notebook, scribbling poems that Alex suspected were laced with unspoken emotions. Other times, Alex would find him in his room, face buried in a pillow, the weight of his thoughts pressing down like gravity. Alex left small notes scattered around the apartment. "Thinking of you. You're stronger than you know. Right here if you need me." Aim to be a steady presence, not an overwhelming force. One particularly chilly evening, fate intervened. They had to share a ride home from campus after a late lecture, the car's heater struggling against the autumn frost. The radio hummed softly in the background, filling the silence with indie melodies. Liam shivered beside Alex, his breath fogging the window. Without a second thought, Alex shrugged off his jacket and draped it over Liam's shoulders. Their arms brushed, and Liam's breath hitched audibly. "Ash, is this okay?" Alex asked, his voice low and careful, not wanting to overstep. Liam nodded, a small but significant affirmation. After a few minutes, he leaned in closer, resting his head gently on Alex's shoulder. It was a tiny gesture, but it felt like the first crack in the fortress, a spark of trust igniting in the quiet. Back at the apartment, they lingered in the hallway, the air thick with unspoken words. Liam seemed reluctant to retreat to his room. Alex broke the silence softly. "I want you in my life fully, Liam, not just the parts you think are safe to share." Liam searched Alex's face, the hallway lamp casting elongated shadows that danced across the walls. He stepped closer, close enough that Alex could see the pulse fluttering in his throat. Tentatively, Liam reached out, and Alex closed the remaining distance. Their foreheads touched in a tender press, and then they kissed, soft, trembling. Filled with the warmth of honesty rather than perfection, Liam pulled back just enough to whisper, "Thank you for not giving up, and for being brave enough to try this with me." But Alex had his own shadows to contend with. In the quiet moments alone, doubts crept in like uninvited guests. What if he wasn't enough for Liam? What if the weight of Liam's fears became too heavy to bear? What if Liam regretted opening up to someone still navigating his own healing journey? Loving someone in the midst of their recovery meant friction and seen fears on both sides. Alex felt exposed to, wanting and needing someone, open doors to vulnerability he hadn't fully anticipated yet. Those doubts melted away in the glow of Liam's genuine smiles, the ones that crinkled the corners of his eyes when he thought Alex wasn't looking. Each time Liam allowed a touch and arm brush, a glimpse of bare skin in the morning light, Alex felt a profound honor. The barriers between them eased gradually. Like ice thawing under spring sun, one crisp night they ventured to the rooftop of their building. The city lights twinkling below like scattered stars, Liam wrapped a thick blanket around them both, his hands lingering a beat longer than necessary. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with the edge of the fabric. Alex handed him a mug of hot chocolate, the steam rising in lazy curls against the cold air. Liam sipped, his gaze fixed on the vast sky above. "Why did you stay?" he asked suddenly, his voice cutting through the night. "That first night when you saw me at my lowest joy, didn't you run?" Alex smiled faintly, the memory vivid. "Because I like you, Liam. Because I believe everyone deserves someone who doesn't bolt when things get real. When vulnerability shows up." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "And because I hoped you'd let me in someday." Liam turned to him, his eyes reflecting the moonlight like polished stones. For a long, suspended moment, Alex feared the walls would snap back into place. Then Liam whispered, "I do want to let you in." They kissed then, deeper than before, still laced with restraint, but infused with growing certainty. Inside Alex, everything shifted, a tremor of emotion that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. He sensed Liam's lingering hesitation, but beneath it pulsed a raw longing that mirrored his own. The climax of their story built slowly, a tension woven from the threads of protection, healing, and trust. Shame and past hurts cast long shadows, but they faced them together. That weekend, Liam expressed a desire to visit his family's home on the outskirts of town, a modest farmhouse surrounded by fields that turned golden in the fall. He needed the grounding of familiar soil, he said. Alex hesitated, wondering if this was a step back or a necessary pause. But he agreed, driving Liam there on Friday evening, the road winding through darkening woods. "I'll call you on the way back," Alex promised, as Liam stepped out. Bag slung over his shoulder, the drive home felt endless, Alex's mind racing with thoughts. This felt like a turning point, a make or break, moment in their fragile connection. Saturday brought a terse text from Liam. "Thanks for the ride." It carried a distant tone that gnawed at Alex. He called later, but the line rang unanswered. He left a voicemail, his voice steady despite the ache. "I miss you. I'm here whenever you're ready." Silence echoed back, amplifying his worries. By Sunday, Alex couldn't sit idle. He drove to a quaint cafe near Liam's hometown, ordering Liam's favorite, a lavender latte with extra foam. He sat by the window, watching rain streak the glass like tears on a cheek. His phone buzzed suddenly. "Can you come by?" Heart pounding, Alex navigated the slick roads to the farmhouse. He knocked, and Liam's mother answered, her smile polite but curious. "Come in, dear," she said, ushering him inside where the air smelled of fresh baked bread and wood polish. Liam waited in the living room, looking transformed, less guarded, though weariness etched his features. His eyes held a new firmness, a resolve that both thrilled and terrified Alex. They sat on the worn couch. The house quiet, with his parents stepping out for errands. "Thank you for coming," Liam said. His hands clasped in his lap, Alex smiled, infusing his words with warmth. "I'm here because I care about you," Liam nodded, drawing a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot. About us. About how terrified I've been of being truly known, truly seen." He exhaled shakily. "Being home. It feels safe in some ways, but there's pressure too. My mom asks about relationships, assuming things that don't fit. My dad talks about milestones I haven't hit, like I'm falling behind. It all builds this expectation of who I should be." Tears welled in Liam's eyes, spilling over as his voice broke. "When I started feeling things for you, it felt like betraying that image, but also betraying what I really want. I don't want to hide anymore." Alex reached for his hand, holding it gently as Liam poured out his heart. In that moment, the walls crumbled further, revealing the man beneath, flawed, beautiful, ready to embrace the unknown. They talked for hours, weaving dreams of a future where fear no longer dictated their steps. As the rain tapered off outside, a rainbow arched across the sky, symbolizing the promise of healing and love that lay ahead. Their story, once tentative, now bloomed with possibility, longer and richer for the trials they'd faced together. My name is Elias, and this is the story of how I fell in love with Rowan. We were 24 and 26 when it began, sharing a narrow brick house in Portland with peeling teal paint and a backyard overrun by blackberries. I was the night shift barista who painted huge abstract canvases in the living room until dawn. Rowan was the quiet software engineer who wore the same 3 hoodies in rotation and always left his bedroom. Door cracked open exactly 2 inches. Like he couldn't decide whether to let the world in or keep it out. We had been roommates for 10 months and friends for 8. I knew he liked his coffee black, that he listened to ambient piano when he coded, that he disappeared into the shower for 45 minutes whenever his mother called. What I didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Rowan had never said the words, "I'm gay," out loud to another human being. Not once, not even to himself in the mirror. It was late October, the kind of rain that feels personal. I came home soaked from the bus stop, paint still under my nails, and found him on the kitchen floor. Not crying, exactly, worse. He was sitting with his back against the cabinets, knees drawn up, staring at nothing like the world had just tilted, and he couldn't find his balance again. There was an open bottle of red wine on the counter and a single shattered glass beside him. Dark red bleeding into the grout. I didn't ask what was wrong. I just knelt, took the dustpan from under the sink, and started sweeping. When the glass was gone, I sat next to him on the cold tile. Our shoulders touched. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered. His voice cracked like thin ice. "Pretending." I waited. He turned his head, eyes red but dry now, and looked at me like I was the last safe thing on earth. "Elias, I think I've been in love with you for months, and I hate myself for it." The room was so quiet I could hear the rain on the skylight and the soft tick of the wall clock. My heart was loud enough for both of us. "You don't have to hate yourself," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Not here. Not with me." He searched my face for the lie and didn't find it. Then he did the bravest thing I've ever seen. He reached for my hand. His fingers shook so hard I felt it in my bones. I laced mine through his and held on. That night we didn't kiss. We sat on the floor until the wine bottle was empty and the rain slowed to a whisper. He told me about the Christian college he'd attended on scholarship. The youth group leader who said gay kids could be fixed if they prayed hard enough. The way his father still asked every Christmas if he was seeing any nice girls. He told me about the boy in 10th grade he'd loved from afar and never spoken to. The panic attacks in public restrooms when someone looked at him too long. The years of telling himself desire was a flaw he could starve out. I told him about growing up in a progressive artist commune where being queer was celebrated but being afraid was not. How I still flinched when men on the street called me names. How I sometimes painted over canvases a dozen times because I was terrified nothing. I made whatever be brave enough. When the sky outside turned lavender with early morning, he rested his head on my shoulder. I felt the exact moment he let himself exhale. We moved slowly after that. Glacially. There were nights I couldn't bear to be touched, and nights I was too scared to ask. There were mornings he woke up convinced I would be gone. In mornings I woke up convinced he'd decided I wasn't worth the risk. But there were other things. 2. The first time he let me trace the freckles across his collarbone with my thumb while we watched old movies on the couch. The first time he wore my oversized cardigan because his hoodie was in the wash, and he laughed actually. Laughed when the sleeves swallowed his hands. The first time he said, "My boyfriend," to the barista at our corner cafe, and didn't he correct himself when she smiled? Winter came early that year. We bought a string of colored lights and draped them over the dying fig tree in the living room. Rowan started leaving his door open for inches, then 6, then all the way. I started falling asleep with my sketchbook on the floor beside his bed instead of mine. One night in January, the power went out during an ice storm. The house dropped into cold and darkness. We found every blanket we owned, made a nest on the living room rug, and lit candles that smelled like cedar and orange. We played cards by flickering light and told each other the worst secrets we still carried. When the last candle burned low, he crawled across the blankets and kissed me. Not careful this time. Not hesitant. A kiss that tasted like finally and thank God and I'm still scared, but I want this anyway. Afterward, we lay tangled together, listening to ice tick against the windows. He pressed his face into my neck. "I thought choosing this would feel like falling," he whispered. "It feels like landing." Spring arrived in small green shocks. Rowan started seeing a therapist who specialized in religious trauma. I started going with him sometimes, sitting in the waiting room, sketching the fish in the aquarium, so he'd have something to smile about when he came out. He came out to his sister over FaceTime and cried so hard he couldn't speak. She cried harder and said she'd always known and loved him more for it. In April, he asked me to meet his best friend from college, Mara, who still didn't know. We went to a tiny ramen shop with steamed-up windows. Rowan reached for my hand across the table in front of her without hesitation. Mara looked at our joined fingers, then at his face, and her eyes filled. "Finally," she said, and hugged him so hard broth sloshed onto the table. We laughed until we couldn't breathe. Summer brought heat and open windows and the smell of blackberries ripening wild in the yard. Rowan learned he liked having his hair played with. I learned he hummed when he was happy and couldn't carry a tune to save his life. We painted the hallway sunflower yellow just because we could, in August. On the anniversary of the night on the kitchen floor, we went back to the coast where we'd once taken a day trip as just friends. The tide was out, the sand flat and shining. Rowan kicked off his shoes and ran into the freezing Pacific like a kid, shouting my name. I chased him. When I caught him, we fell into the shallow waves, soaked and laughing, salt on our lips. Later, walking back as the sun set pink and gold, he stopped and took both my hands. "Elias," he said, voice steady even though his eyes were bright with tears, "I love you." Out loud. In front of the whole damn ocean? I kissed him until neither of us could breathe. Years have passed now. We still live in the little teal house, though we repainted it sage green last spring. Rowan's shoulders no longer fold inward when he walks into a room. He says my husband now, because we got married on a Tuesday in the backyard with 20 people and too many blackberries, and the word sounds like it was always meant to belong to him. Some nights the old fear still creeps in. Some nights one of us wakes up shaking from dreams we can't name. But we have learned the ritual. Breathe together. Name the fear out loud. Hold on until it passes. Love is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to stay anyway. This is not a story about a single kiss or a grand coming out moment under dramatic circumstances. It's a story about the quiet daily courage of choosing to be seen. About kitchen floors and candlelight and learning that safety is something people can build. One honest breath at a time. If you are reading this and you are terrified of what love might cost, terrified of what truth might demand, please hear me. You do not have to be unafraid to begin. You only have to be unwilling to keep hiding. There will be someone who stays. There will be someone who sees the shaking and reaches anyway. No, I'm holding his hand right now. This is our love story. Not because it was easy, because it was true.